The One Piece live-action show totally nailed a bunch of stuff, but honestly, if you're a die-hard One Piece fan like me, there's a ton of things they could have totally done better. So today we are looking at 5 things that really caught my eye and 5 things that didn't quite hit the mark for me. But what did you enjoy the most about the series and what didn't quite do it for you? Go ahead and drop your thoughts in the comments. And I'm particularly curious, what do you think about my last point? It would also be real awesome if you could smash the like and subscribe button, and let's go. Good!
Now, maybe we should skip right to the finale.
So the first awesome thing happens in just the second episode. It's hands down what I absolutely love the most about the whole series. I'm talking about Buggy and his circus. The circus isn't just way darker, since they've got everyone from town locked up and making them join in, but there's also Buggy. He's one hell of a well-acted character. His role was on point and I think he had a lot of fun while playing. Not only did he bring the fun with his one-liners, but they also added some real depth to his clown persona. He's all about making people laugh at what he wants, cause, well, he's a clown. A clown who crazed the spotlight, but it got swiped by Shanks. That betrayal cut him deep, so he even offered Luffy a spot in his crew in exchange for the Grand Line map. Luffy turned him down though.
Never! Why not? Ah! God!
Sad. But let's talk about how he knocks out Luffy. It's just breathtaking. He starts chatting with Luffy, then shifts his focus to his hand behind him, which stuns him, takes a swing, and then tops it off with the middle finger. That scene really hit me hard. I really enjoyed it whenever Buggy keeps popping up in the series.
I'm gonna get out of here.
Bet? As great as Buggy did with his performance, they really fucked up some others. But you know what? We can all look past the fact that Nami isn't exactly the youngest at 30 years of age, and there might be some slight difficulties in the next seasons since, well, Nami is still supposed to be 18. Who cares that Sham is a woman? No, when it comes to Kobe, it was actually a pretty good choice that he was played as feminine as possible, which is obvious since he's played by a woman. But let's get to the real deal here. Ben fucking Beckmann. And it's not just about his looks. I mean, I'm pretty sure the casting took place at 2 AM next to a pub in some back LA, and Oda probably had get his eyes checked after giving it the green light. But seriously, his character is anything but Ben Beckmann we know and love, the way he should be. After all, his captain is a very chill guy who doesn't take things too seriously. Unless it gets real serious, then you don't want to be his enemy. But normally, Ben Beckmann is the calm, cool dude who doesn't let anything faze him, handles every situation with ease, and would rather have a smoke while casually taking down some bandits with his gun than stress about it. But in the series, it's like the complete opposite. Not just in terms of looks, but in terms of his character. He's not the tough guy, he's not laid back, and I never got the feeling that he's got a handle on the situation. I don't know why they went with that, it's just plain awful. Ben Beckmann got worse treatment in the writing and casting than Johnny. And he's not even in the series. Good. The whole series isn't afraid to go a much darker and creepier way. I mean, whether it's the brain on the floor here, Zoro shrinking Mr. Seven down and carrying him around in a sack there, or Kuros stabs Mary from behind. Sure, in the original there are some cut off arms and half destroyed heads, but Netflix goes a separate way too. It's not just the high level of violence, which, let's be real, we kinda expect from pirates, but it's also the eerie horror vibe that hangs in the air. Buggy's circus wasn't so good just because of Buggy himself, but also thanks to the lightning and the fact that the people were forced to be spectators and laugh along. And then with Miss Kaya, it's like suddenly stepping in Alice in Wonderland, but when things got real, Kuro went full on Freddy Krueger mode. Those unexpected horror vibes really spiced things up, and I would have really enjoyed it if they had kept that style going. Bet? So earlier we had a pretty loosey cast, which includes the scared Moji. But now we got no cast at all, and to be honest, that's a real letdown. Django was the key for Kuros' plan and absolutely essential. Sham and Buggy on the other hand felt totally interchangeable, especially considering they are not the damn vice captain. In the same arc, we didn't even have the Black Cat pirates, cause supposedly Kuro wiped them all out. Okay, fine. But it was pretty darn sad that we didn't get to see Onion, Carrot and Pepper. I get it, it might have been a challenge to fit them in without Django, because without him they wouldn't have something to do in the final. But the fact that Usopp didn't have a pirate crew before then really took away some feelings from the climax of the arc. Let's just ignore Don Krieg's fate, like they ignored his importance in the story. Johnny and Yosaku weren't exactly important characters or anything. They were funny, but not irreplaceable. But that's a whole different story with Hachan. Introducing his character here was actually crucial for the storyline. Seeing from the start that he might have been a bit lost and naive, but above all, he had a good heart and wasn't in that every human must die mindset like all the other fishmen. His comeback and that scene at Sapaodi, well, it just hits harder thanks to his initial introduction. And no, they really can't be serious that this should be Hachan. That they are not all the same was the point they tried to make in the discrimination topic. I think they were trying to make that point with the fishman at the Barati, but I don't know. Good! You know what I always like? Easter eggs. It's just cool to stumble upon them and just to chase them down. Like, right off the bat, after Roger's execution, you can spot Mihawk's little paddleboat, and right next to it, you got the Odo Jackson. Then there's that newspaper seagull spreading the word that the war's still raging on Broccoli Island. And let's not forget about the bounties on Foxy, Bellamy, or Cavendish. Shushu also makes a quick cameo, although I was hoping seeing more of him. Or that the Revolutionary Army taking over a whole country. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There are just so damn many Easter eggs, which is totally awesome. Bet? We were just talking about Django earlier, and now it's time to dive into that part of the story. Specifically, Captain Black's supposedly brilliant plan of the so-called Master Tactician. This whole thing just doesn't add up one bit. Let's start by looking at what was originally planned. Kuro infiltrated as a butler 3 years ago, gaining the trust of Miss Kaya and the village residents. His grand idea was to have his old crew attack the village, resulting in the tragic death of Miss Kaya. But here's the kicker. Django played the most critical role. He needed to hypnotize Miss Kaya and convince her to include Kuro in her will so that he could inherit her wealth after the attack. It makes sense because Kuro wasn't a part of the family and it seemed more likely that Mary would get it all rather than Kuro. So he gets attacked too, but doesn't get killed since he survived the attack. Actually, that's not a bad plan. The village trusts him, he's in Kaya's will, the pirates come and wrecks the place, and so he can just inherit the riches. All pretty straightforward, right? And now let's talk about the Netflix version. It gets downright bizarre here, especially because Django is nowhere to be found to work his hypnotism magic on Kaya. Instead, he goes ahead and wipes out his entire crew except of Sham and Buggy, who help him manage the household. Meanwhile, the big master plan is to slowly poison Kaya so she kicks the bucket on her 18th birthday, which just happens to be today, and that's when Kuro can cash in on the inheritance. Mary gets suspicious and starts questioning Kaya's decision to hand over the estate to Kuro, even though she hasn't learned about it yet. But why should he say something like that to Mary in the first place? Flat out lying and putting the whole operation at risk, especially when Kuro was planning to kill him anyway. And let's not even start with the assumption that Zoro is dead just because Sham smacked him with the bottle. That's far from good. Sure, Mary survived in the manga, but honestly, assuming he was a gunner after getting sliced up with 5 blades made a whole lot more sense. Here, Zoro just takes a bottle to the back of his head. Sure, it hurts. Sure, it can get really bad. But that? Next up, Kuro makes his way to Miss Kaya, wearing his gloves, ready to kill her. But hold up, there's no contract signed, no will drafted. Kaya is a bit weak because of the poison, yeah, but not dead. And Sham and Buggy don't have gloves with little blades, they've got swords and daggers. So why are they acting all catty if they don't even fight like one? But back to the master plan. Kuro's brilliant idea now is to straight up murder Miss Kaya, leaving him with a dismembered corpse, and I'm left wondering how the heck he planned to cover that up. They could have blamed Luffy and his crew, but guess what? Luffy was handed out to the Marines. Zoro's supposed to be dead, and Usopp was also with the Marines. As much as I enjoyed the Alice in Wonderland and Freddy Krueger vibes, the more I hated what they did to the plan. Oh yeah, it seems that Mary is dead, leaving Miss Kaya all by herself. Good! Now another top tier casting. So let's talk about Helmeppo. Seriously, this guy couldn't have portrayed that snotty little punk any more spot on. Acting all high and mighty, challenged Zoro for a fight, probably because he thought no one would dare step up to him. And then, after sealing the deal with Zoro, that scene with the sword in front of the mirror. He absolutely nailed that whole narcissistic vibe. And let's not forget about his fresh new Merkel-inspired haircut. That was the cherry on top of the lasagna. We have so many great actors and performances here in this series, but seriously, that is just a fantastic performance.
Come on, tough guy, 3 swords?
Bad? Helmeppo is good, Garp is bad. I have to say, that whole side story just didn't do it for me. Instead, they could have focused on some other, more important scenes. But right now is not the time to talk about the scenes, but Garp himself. He was so bad from start to finish. Why? Is it another one of those typical Netflix statements where they make the old white man to be the villain who's just terrorizing his grandson? There's just no charm to him, no real smiles, except maybe at the end and some crazy ones. Right from that scene on the scaffold, Garp just felt off talking like that to Roger. He would never, never disrespect Roger like that, especially in his final moments. Oh, and by the way, Roger would never kneel. It's just not his character. Garp is usually this laid-back, easygoing guy who's always got a laugh ready, especially when his grandson's causing trouble. But in this version, I couldn't find a single moment where he came across as likable. Always unnecessarily aggressive, in a perpetual bad mood, and just plain angry.
Your training begins today.
Maybe it's just me, but I felt they didn't have to do much more than picking up Corby, Helmeppo and Morgan. Good! Overall, they did a good job with that series. People who read One Piece won't get a carbon copy of the same story. Instead, you're treated with a well-crafted adaptation with its own brand of humor.
Does it come with a free face tattoo? My favorite is number 1.
Oda probably deserves a lot of credit for that. While he couldn't carry everything, we can at least label it as a successful adaptation. The settings look great, especially the CGI for the most part. The Sea King was awesome. Luffy's Gum Gum no Balloon could be done better, but they did a decent job portraying all that rubber stuff. Those moments of horror in the circus and Miss Kaya's house, the transition from the fantastical world to ours, and only in a few instances did it seem a bit forced. Try pulling that off with characters who look like that! They just nailed it.
This is what it's all about. From now on, it's all gonna be smooth sailing.
Bad? As mentioned in the previous negative point, let's now talk about the scenes with Garp. And this is by far the biggest criticism. This whole half-hearted subplot with Garp, Corby and Helmeppo takes up so much time that they couldn't properly incorporate some monumentally important scenes from the manga and anime. They had the time to perfectly integrate all the scenes if they had just omitted all the scenes with Garp and company that go beyond the arrest of Morgan. All of that behind the arrest of Morgan took a total of 49 minutes. That's a whole episode! But which are these, in my opinion, essential scenes? Starting with the meeting with Zoro. They should have shown him hungry already, so Rika would have a real reason to bring him some food. Having a random girl just walk up to Zoro, who's standing there with a half person in a bag, felt incredibly forced. Zoro wasn't hungry. Zoro was fine. They could have invested maybe 2 or 3 minutes more to set that up properly. Then there's Zoro's rescue. Not only does Luffy undo only 2 ropes when Zoro was tied up with 3, but it also misses the point that Zoro's motivation and reason for sailing with Luffy was because he owed him his life. Luffy saved him from a lot of bullets there. Here, Luffy has no idea that Zoro was supposed to die there. Helmeppo comes to Zoro and tells him. Luffy knew nothing about it, goes to Zoro, wants to untie him, who doesn't want it anyway, even though Helmeppo says he will die there, and Luffy unties him. Then he wants to leave but notices Nami and Luffy fighting with the Marines and just joins in. But why though? He doesn't have a proper reason. Another missing scene was the one with Shushu, which was supposed to make Nami realize that Luffy is different from the pirates she knows. Here, you can sort of understand it because all the villagers were in the circus. 10 more minutes. They wouldn't have needed to lock everyone in the circus. Some could have stayed in the village, which get hunted by Moji and Richie. Luffy then could have met Moji with Richie, and they could have had the scene with the dog, which would have been chilling. The adaptation clearly lacks emotion. The only scene that really touched me was the scene with Nami. Although, even there, the knife stabbing should have been much more intense and not just leave 2 little pricks. Another crucial scene was Usopp disbanding his crew to become a real pirate. We have already talked about Django and Kuros' plan. Sanji didn't throw away food during the flashback. That's an important scene because back then he didn't appreciate food and only learned its true value after barely eating for 70 days. Plus, Sanji still looks way too well fed after those 70 days. There's no sign of malnutrition, no sign of struggle, nothing. They could make it with CGI and makeup in Captain America in 2011. So I think that it's possible for them in 2023 as well. The part with Krieg was okay, but they could have just left out Jin if they were going to rush it anyway. Jin is just too loyal to let Krieg die in a battle and just run off. Sanji's farewell with Zeff was rushed too. Didn't catch me anything that hard like in the anime. And then there's Kokoyashi. A lot of things felt really off here too. The fact that Nujiko didn't know about Nami's plan. Why? The entire village knowing about it and believing in her, playing along and not rebelling was significant. Nami not knowing about it at first and then finding out was what made her go berserk, especially when the money was gone. Also, we saw Nami as a child stealing from pirates and getting beaten repeatedly and coming back with injuries. That she went through hell and faced extreme dangers at such a young age. And Luffy's ignorance mode in the manga had a strong meaning too. He used to sleep on the streets, always walked away when Nujiko wanted to talk about Nami's past because he wasn't interested in why she ended up in her situation. He just wanted to help her, no matter the reason, if she asked him to. That's all he needed to know. No past, no anything. You're part of my crew, you're my friend, so I help you, you just have to tell me. Usopp pretended to be dead and tried to avoid the fight. But he only went back into the fight after thinking about his friends, feeling ashamed, and then defeated Kiss. It was even funnier in the manga and anime. And they could have made it just as epic and just as funny with an extra of 3 minutes. Instead, ha, I'm dead! Just kidding, now you're dead! And of course, Luffy's final attack against Arlong to destroy Arlong Park. Here, he destroys Nami's room because he wants to get back at Arlong and take something he was proud of. But actually, he did it to make Nami happy again. He didn't do it to humiliate someone else, even an enemy, or to destroy their pride. He did it for a friend. Not against someone, but for someone. The room symbolized Nami's prison, and by destroying it, she was liberated from Arlong. The conversation between Luffy and Genzo at Belmer's grave is missing. Properly incorporating these scenes would probably take around 50 minutes, perhaps even less, which is exactly the length of the unnecessary side story of Garp and the others. I understand they wanted to take another approach than the original, but then to change or completely remove those scenes with the highest emotional weight, even if it's anger or sadness or whatever, was just plain unnecessary. One Piece is filled with all kinds of emotions. Removing these key points doesn't show me that they really understood the series and the characters. Yes, I know, Oda worked on it too, and probably prevented worse things from happening. But actually, he doesn't want that side story as well, and was just asking about it on a regular basis until he then someday said yes.
And if there was something that Oda-san was really unhappy with, we found a way to change it. But there were some things that we tried and got into the show that initially he was a little gun-shy about.
I don't even want to know how often that happens and in which extent Oda advices get rejected or accepted. Well, those are my 5 good and 5 bad things in the One Piece live-action adaptation. What do you think about these points? Do you resonate or not? Just write it down in the comments. Well, that's it again from me. We'll see us next time, so take care, my friends.